They didn't just hide Enoch's calendar. They destroyed it, rewrote history around it, and built an entire system to make sure you'd never question the timeline you're living in. Because if you understood what Enoch knew about time, if you truly grasped what his 364-day calendar reveals, everything would change. The way you see history, the way you measure your life, the way you understand reality itself, all of it would crack open like an egg, and what's inside would terrify those who need you to stay asleep. You've been living by a broken clock. Every January 1st, every leap year, every time you check your phone for the date, you're following a system that was designed to disconnect you from something ancient, something true. And it's not an accident. It's a control mechanism so effective that you never even thought to question it. But Enoch knew. He knew how time actually works, and he left us the proof in a calendar that refuses to die no matter how hard they've tried to bury it. And it's not an accident. It's a control mechanism so effective that you never even thought to question it. But Enoch knew. Think about this. Why does our calendar need constant fixing? Why do we add a day every 4 years? Why are months different lengths with no pattern? Why does the whole thing feel arbitrary, like someone threw it together and said, "Good enough"? Because that's exactly what happened. 364 days, 52 weeks, 4 seasons of exactly 91 days each, 12 months of 30 days, plus 4 extra days marking the equinoxes and solstices. No leap years, no adjustments, no corrections, just perfect perpetual harmony with the sun, the moon, and the stars. It worked for thousands of years, and then suddenly, it didn't. Not because it stopped working, but because someone wanted it gone. The Book of Enoch describes this calendar in detail. It wasn't just a way to count days. It was a map of divine order. Enoch walked with God and was shown how time truly functions. Not as a river flowing forward, but as a wheel turning in perfect rhythm. The sun moves through its course. The moon follows its phases. The stars rotate in their positions. And humanity, when connected to this rhythm, was in sync with creation itself. But something changed. Someone broke the wheel. Here's what they don't want you to know. The calendar you use today was forced on the world. Before the Gregorian calendar came the Julian calendar, and before that, a mess of different systems used by different empires. But the ancient world, from the Essenes at Qumran to the priests at the temple in Jerusalem, they used Enoch's calendar. It was the sacred count, the one that matched the heavens. And then Rome showed up. Rome didn't just conquer lands, it conquered time itself. Emperor Julius Caesar, advised by an Egyptian astronomer, created a new calendar in 45 BCE. It had 365 days with an extra day every 4 years. Why? Because the solar year is actually 365.25 days, they said. Close enough. Except it wasn't close enough, and over centuries the Julian calendar drifted so far off the seasons that Pope Gregory III had to fix it in 1582. But here's the thing, Enoch's calendar never drifted. It didn't need fixing because it wasn't measuring time the way we do. It was measuring something else entirely. The 364-day calendar is solar, yes, but it's also spiritual. Those 4 extra days marking the turning points of the year, the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices, weren't just random additions. They were sacred portals, times when the veil between worlds grew thin, when divine energy could flow more freely into the physical dimension. Ancient cultures all over the world recognized these dates as holy. The Egyptians with their mysteries, the Druids with their ceremonies, the Maya with their precise calculations. They all knew something we've forgotten. Time is not neutral. It's alive. When you live by a calendar that syncs with cosmic rhythm, your life syncs too. Your body, your mind, your spirit, they all attune to the frequency of creation. You wake up with the sun, you rest with the moon, you feel the turning of seasons in your bones. But when you live by a broken calendar, a fabricated timeline, you're cut off. You drift, You lose that connection, and suddenly you're living in artificial time where nothing feels quite right anymore. This is why they changed it. Not because Enoch's calendar was wrong, but because it was too right. It gave people a direct link to the divine order. It made every human being a priest of their own experience, capable of reading the signs in the sky and understanding the patterns of existence. And systems built on control can't allow that. They need you confused, disconnected, relying on experts to tell you what time it is, what season it is, what's coming next. The Dead Sea Scrolls prove Enoch's calendar was real and widely used. When those scrolls were discovered in caves near Qumran in 1947, archaeologists found copies of the Book of Enoch and detailed descriptions of the 364-day calendar. The Essenes, a Jewish sect living in the desert, had been using it for centuries. They didn't follow the lunar calendar used in Jerusalem. They followed Enoch's solar calendar because they believed it was the true divine count, and they were killed for it. History tells us the Essenes were destroyed by the Romans during the Jewish-Roman Wars. Their settlement was burned, their people scattered or slaughtered, and their texts hidden in caves where they stayed for 2,000 years. Coincidence? Or was it a systematic removal of everyone who remembered the old ways, the true count, the calendar that connected humanity to something the empire couldn't control? Fast forward to the early Christian church. When the Council of Nicaea met in 325 CE, they decided a lot of things: what books would be in the Bible, what doctrines would be official, and yes, what calendar the church would use. The Book of Enoch, once considered scripture by early Christians, was left out. The 364-day calendar was abandoned. Instead, they adopted the Roman system, the Julian calendar, because Rome was now Christian. And if you wanted to spread your religion across the empire, you played by empire rules. But something else happened at Nicaea that most people don't talk about. They set the date for Easter, and they based it on the lunar calendar, not the solar one. Why? Because Easter needed to move around. It needed to be flexible, adjustable, something the church could control. If they'd used Enoch's calendar, Easter would fall on the same date every single year, locked in by cosmic law. But the lunar system meant the church could calculate it, announce it, own it, and every Christian in the world would have to come to them to find out when to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. Control the calendar, control the people. It's the oldest trick in the book. Every empire that's ever existed has done it. The Egyptians had their calendar, the Babylonians had theirs, the Maya had theirs, and each one encoded knowledge about time that went beyond just counting days. They were tracking cycles of consciousness, periods of spiritual opportunity, windows when change was possible. And every time a new empire took over, one of the first things they did was change the calendar, reset the count, make everyone forget what came before. But Enoch's calendar survived, not in mainstream culture, not in official doctrine, but in secret. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still uses it today. They have a 364-day calendar, 13 months instead of 12, and they celebrate holidays on different dates than the rest of the Christian world. They never gave up the old ways. They kept the Book of Enoch in their Bible when everyone else removed it, and they still follow the count that Enoch brought down from the heavens. What does that tell you? That maybe, just maybe, they know something the rest of us have forgotten. That maybe the timeline we're living in isn't the only one, isn't the real one, isn't the one we were meant to follow. And if that's true, then what else have we forgotten? What other truths were buried along with Enoch's calendar? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Time is not what you think it is. Modern physics is just starting to catch up to what ancient mystics always knew. Time is relative. It bends, it stretches, it loops back on itself. Einstein proved that 100 years ago, but he was just confirming what Enoch had written thousands of years earlier. Time is not a straight line. It's a spiral, a wheel, a cycle, and depending on which calendar you use, you're either riding that wheel or fighting against it. The 364-day calendar divides perfectly into 4. 91 days per season, 7 times 13. 13 weeks per quarter. Every year starts on the same day of the week. Every date falls on the same day every year. It's perfect symmetry, perfect balance, perfect order. And that perfection is not human, it's divine. It's the fingerprint of creation itself, the way time was designed to function before we messed with it. But our current calendar? It's chaos. January has 31 days, February has 28, sometimes 29. March has 31 again. There's no pattern, no logic, no connection to anything natural. It's a broken system forced to work through constant corrections. And we just accept it because we don't know any different. We've been conditioned to think this is normal, that time is just something arbitrary we invented to organize our lives. But what if it's not arbitrary? What if the calendar you use actually shapes your experience of reality? What if living by a false count disconnects you from the natural flow of energy that moves through the universe? What if you've been living out of sync your entire life and you never even knew it? The ancient Hebrews had a phrase, appointed times. In the original Hebrew, it's moed, specific moments marked by divine order, times when heaven and earth touch. The festivals described in Leviticus, Passover, Pentecost, Tabernacles, they weren't random. They fell on specific dates in a specific order because they corresponded to cosmic events, spiritual openings, moments when the divine was more accessible, and they were calculated using Enoch's calendar. When Rome changed the calendar, those appointed times got scrambled. The dates moved around, the rhythm broke, and suddenly, the festivals that were designed to connect people with divine energy became just holidays, just traditions, just empty rituals repeated without understanding. The power leaked out because the timing was off. It's like trying to tune into a radio station when you're 1 degree off the frequency. You get static instead of signal. This is what they took from you when they hid Enoch's calendar. Not just a way to count days, but a system of alignment. A method for syncing your life with the pulse of creation. A map showing you when to act, when to rest, when to plant, when to harvest. Not just crops, but your own spiritual growth. And they replaced it with something that keeps you perpetually off balance, always chasing, always late, always feeling like you're missing something, but never quite knowing what. The Mayan calendar has a similar structure. 260 days for the sacred count, 365 for the solar year, and they run parallel, intersecting at specific points. The Maya knew that time operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the time you experience day to day, and then there's sacred time, the underlying rhythm that governs cycles of consciousness and human development. And when you understand both, when you can track both, you become something more than just a person living a life. You become aware of the pattern. Enoch's calendar does the same thing. It shows you where you are in the cosmic cycle, where humanity is, where creation itself is moving. And that's dangerous knowledge if you're trying to build an empire or maintain control over millions of people. Because once someone sees the pattern, once they understand the cycle, they stop being predictable. They stop being manageable. They start asking questions that don't have comfortable answers. Questions like, why are we living by a calendar created by Caesar instead of one revealed by God? Why do we accept leap years and irregular months when there's a perfect system we could use instead? Why did the church remove the Book of Enoch when it was considered scripture for centuries? What else did they hide, and why? The timeline you're living in is fabricated. Not in the sense that history didn't happen, but in the sense that the way you measure it, the way you experience it, the way you understand it, all of that has been constructed to keep you inside a particular frame. And that frame is too small, it cuts off the edges, the parts that don't fit the narrative, the truths that would break the illusion. Enoch walked with God and was shown the structure of time itself. He saw how the sun and moon were set in their courses, how the stars marked the seasons, how everything moved in perfect harmony. And he was told to write it down, to preserve it, to pass it on so that future generations would know the truth. But future generations didn't want the truth. They wanted control. So they took Enoch's calendar and buried it. But here's what they couldn't bury: the human soul's innate sense of rhythm. You feel it, don't you? That sense that something's off, that time moves too fast or too slow, that the days blur together in ways they shouldn't. You've been told you're just busy, just stressed, just getting older. But what if it's not you? What if it's the calendar itself, pulling you out of alignment with your natural state? People who've tried living by Enoch's calendar report something remarkable. They feel different, more grounded, more connected. Like their internal clock suddenly matches something external, something bigger. They start noticing patterns in their life that correspond to the solar quarters. They feel the turning of the equinoxes and solstices in their body, their mood, their energy. They wake up to the reality that time is not abstract. It's physical, spiritual, experiential, and that's when things start to change. Because once you're in sync with true time, with divine time, you become harder to control. You don't respond to the same pressures. You don't follow the same programs. You start living according to a different set of laws, not human laws, but cosmic ones. And that makes you dangerous to systems built on conformity and obedience. This is why the Book of Enoch was banned. Not just because it talked about fallen angels or divine secrets, but because it gave people something practical. A calendar that worked, a system that made sense, a way to reclaim their connection to something older and truer than any empire. And empires hate that. They hate anything that reminds people they don't need permission to be spiritual, don't need an institution to be connected, don't need a priest to tell them what time it really is. The number 364 itself is sacred. It's divisible by 7, which appears throughout Scripture as the number of divine completion. 7 days of creation, 7 seals, 7 churches, 7 angels. It's the structure of sacred time, and Enoch's calendar embodies it perfectly. 52 weeks, each one a complete cycle, each one a miniature version of the year itself. And those 4 extra days, the liminal moments at the solstices and equinoxes, they're bridges between the ordinary and the extraordinary, times when the rules bend and new possibilities open. But we don't celebrate those days anymore. We don't even know when they really are because our calendar has drifted so far from natural cycles that spring doesn't start when it should. Autumn feels early or late depending on the year, and the whole thing is a mess. We've lost the rhythm, and in losing the rhythm, we've lost something essential about being human. Ancient people built their entire lives around these cycles. When to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate, when to mourn. They didn't need scientists to tell them about seasonal affective disorder or circadian rhythms. They already knew that humans are meant to live in sync with the earth and sky, and they had a calendar that helped them do it. We don't. We have alarm clocks and artificial light and schedules that ignore the sun entirely. We work against our bodies, against nature, against the very structure of time itself. And we wonder why everyone's exhausted. Enoch's calendar offers a way back. Not back to some primitive past, but back to alignment. Back to a way of living that honors the cycles instead of fighting them. Back to understanding that you are not separate from the cosmos. You're part of it, moving with it, breathing with it, living within its rhythm. And when you remember that, when you start organizing your life around true time instead of fabricated time, something moves inside you. You start to see the patterns. You notice that certain things happen at certain times of the year, not randomly, but predictably. You feel the energy turn with the seasons. You understand why ancient festivals were held when they were, because those were the appointed times, the moments when heaven and earth aligned just right. And you start to wonder what else you've been lied to about. Because if they lied about the calendar, what else did they lie about? If they hid Enoch's perfect system and replaced it with Rome's broken one, what other truths did they bury? What other knowledge was deemed too dangerous for ordinary people to have? The more you look, the more you realize. This isn't just about days and dates. It's about control. It's about keeping humanity disconnected from our true nature, from divine order, from the very rhythm of creation. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church celebrates Christmas on January 7th according to our calendar, but according to theirs, according to Enoch's calendar, it falls exactly when it should, aligned with cosmic time rather than political time. They celebrate all their festivals differently, not because they're wrong, but because they never surrendered the old ways. They kept the calendar that works, and they kept the Book of Enoch, all 108 chapters of it, right there in their Bible where it belongs. What do they know that we don't? What did they preserve that the rest of Christianity lost? Maybe the answer is simpler than we think. They know what time it really is. They know when the appointed times actually fall. They know how to stay connected to the divine rhythm because they never let anyone take their calendar away. But for the rest of us, living in the West, following the Gregorian calendar, marking time by Roman rules, we're adrift. We're living in fabricated time, in a timeline that was constructed to serve an empire that died 2,000 years ago, but whose systems still control how we move through the world. We wake up to alarms instead of sunrise. We ignore the moon. We barely notice the solstices. We're cut off. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they hid Enoch's calendar in the first place. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. Because it connected people directly to divine order without any mediator, without any institution controlling the process. And that's terrifying to anyone who wants to build a system based on obedience rather than understanding. So, what do you do with this information? You can't exactly switch to a calendar that the rest of society doesn't use. You can't tell your boss you're following Enoch's count now and your deadline is actually next week according to true time. But what you can do is start paying attention. Start noticing when the equinoxes and solstices actually fall. Start feeling the rhythm of the seasons in your body. Start recognizing that time is not the abstract thing you thought it was. It's real, it's physical, it's spiritual. And you can start asking questions. Why did they change it? What were they afraid of? What power did Enoch's calendar hold that made it worth destroying? Because it's not about days and dates. It's never been about that. It's about connection. It's about knowing where you stand in the cosmic order. It's about remembering that you're not just drifting through some random existence. You're part of a pattern, a cycle, a divine plan that's been unfolding since before time itself. Enoch knew this. He walked with God and was shown the structure, and he wrote it down so we would remember. But we forgot. Or rather, we were made to forget. The calendar was hidden, the book was banned, and the entire system was rewritten to make sure we'd stay disconnected, stay confused, stay obedient to human authority instead of divine law. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you bury it. It waits. It persists. It shows up in Ethiopian churches that never surrendered, in Dead Sea Scrolls hidden in caves, in ancient texts preserved by people who knew the value of what they were protecting. And eventually, it finds its way back to those ready to receive it. If you've read this far, you're ready. You're ready to know that the timeline you're living in isn't the real one. You're ready to understand that Enoch's 364-day calendar proves we've been disconnected from divine time and forced to live by human time. You're ready to see that this wasn't an accident. It was a choice made by people who wanted control more than they wanted truth. And now, you have a choice too. You can keep following the fabricated timeline, the broken calendar, the system that keeps you perpetually out of sync. Or you can start remembering, start reconnecting, start living according to the rhythm that Enoch saw when he walked with God. Not by changing your entire life overnight, but by simply becoming aware, by noticing, by paying attention to the cycles that are still there, still operating, still available to anyone willing to look up at the sky and see what's really happening. The calendar they gave you is wrong. But the calendar Enoch gave us is still here, waiting in the shadows of history, preserved by those who refuse to let it die. And the question isn't whether you'll use it in your daily life. The question is whether you'll let it change how you see time itself. Because once you understand that they lied about something as fundamental as the calendar, once you see that they fabricated the very timeline you're living in, everything else starts to crack open too. And that's when the real awakening begins. Not with grand revelations or mystical experiences, but with something as simple as realizing they changed the calendar, and in doing so, they changed us. They disconnected us from the divine rhythm, from the appointed times, from the perfect order that Enoch saw and tried to preserve. But we can reconnect. We can remember. We can reclaim what was taken. All it takes is the willingness to question what you've always accepted. To look at that calendar on your wall and ask, who made this and why? To recognize that Enoch's 364-day system isn't just ancient history. It's a key to understanding how time really works, how the universe really operates, and how you fit into the cosmic pattern. They hid it because they knew its power. But hiding something doesn't destroy it. It just makes it more valuable when it's finally found again. Look at what happened to other calendar systems throughout history. The French Revolutionary calendar tried to reset everything in the 1790s. They renamed all the months, created 10-day weeks, and attempted to erase Christian influence from timekeeping. It lasted 12 years before Napoleon scrapped it and went back to the Gregorian system. Why? Because you can't just invent a calendar from thin air. It has to connect to something real, something cosmic. The French calendar was purely political, purely human invention, and it failed because it had no anchor in the natural order. But Enoch's calendar, it lasted for millennia. It was used by multiple cultures across vast distances. It survived in the Dead Sea Scrolls for 2,000 years. It's still alive in Ethiopia today. That's not the story of a failed system. That's the story of something so powerful, so true, that it couldn't be completely destroyed no matter how hard they tried. The Essenes weren't just using Enoch's calendar for convenience. They built their entire spiritual practice around it. The festivals, the fasts, the holy days, everything was timed according to the 364-day count because they understood that spiritual work is amplified during certain windows. You don't just pray whenever you feel like it and hope for the best. You align your practice with cosmic rhythms, and the results are exponentially stronger. This is what modern spirituality has lost. We've been told that intention is everything, that you can manifest or meditate or pray anytime, anywhere, and get the same results, but that's not how energy works. There are high tides and low tides. There are moments when the veil is thin and moments when it's thick. The ancient world knew this. They tracked these cycles obsessively because they understood that timing matters. Enoch's calendar gave them the map. It showed them when the gates were open, when divine energy was flowing most freely, when their prayers had the best chance of being heard. And when Rome changed the calendar, those gates got locked. Not permanently, but enough to make it harder. Enough to make people lose faith. Enough to make the old practices seem less effective, which made them easier to abandon. Think about what that means. If spiritual practice is most effective during specific times, and those times are tracked by a specific calendar, then changing the calendar is spiritual warfare. It's not just political. It's not just about organizing society. It's about cutting people off from their source of power. And that's exactly what happened. The Book of Jubilees, another ancient text, backs up everything in the Book of Enoch about the calendar. It describes the same 364-day system, the same structure, the same understanding that this is how God intended time to be measured, and like the Book of Enoch, it was removed from most Bibles. 2 different sources, 2 different authors, same message. This is the true calendar, but both were banned, both were buried. Both were deemed too dangerous to leave in the hands of ordinary believers. Why would two separate texts about the calendar be considered dangerous? What threat did they pose? The answer is simple. They gave people independence. If you have the true calendar, you don't need a priest to tell you when to observe holy days. You don't need a church to announce when Easter is. You don't need an institution at all. You can read the sky, track the sun, count the days yourself. You become your own spiritual authority, and that's intolerable to any system built on hierarchy and control. The Catholic Church didn't become the most powerful institution in Europe by encouraging people to think for themselves. It became powerful by positioning itself as the sole mediator between God and humanity. And one of the ways it maintained that position was by controlling time itself. By controlling the calendar, it controlled when people worshipped, when they fasted, when they celebrated. It controlled the rhythm of religious life. Enoch's calendar would have destroyed that control. So it had to go. But here's what's fascinating. The calendar didn't just disappear. It went underground. It was preserved by groups that operated outside mainstream religion: mystics, Gnostics, esoteric schools. These groups understood that the calendar was more than a practical system. It was a key to understanding the structure of reality itself, and they guarded it carefully, passing it down through initiates who proved themselves worthy of the knowledge. The Knights Templar might have known about it. The Rosicrucians definitely did. Alchemists and astrologers throughout the medieval period used calendar systems that didn't match the official one, because they were tracking something else. Cosmic time, not political time. They knew that certain alchemical processes had to be started on specific days, that certain astrological operations only worked during certain windows, and those windows were calculated using older systems that went back to Enoch. This knowledge survived in symbols, in coded texts, in practices that seemed superstitious to outsiders but made perfect sense to those who understood. And gradually, over centuries, it started to come back. Not all at once, not in a dramatic revelation, but in pieces. The Dead Sea Scrolls discovery in 1947 was huge. Suddenly, here was physical proof that Enoch's calendar had been real, had been used, had been important enough to preserve in multiple copies. And researchers started asking questions. Why this calendar? Why 364 days? What were the Essenes doing that required such precise timekeeping? And the more they looked, the more they found connections. The Qumran community wasn't just religious, it was mystical. They weren't just studying scripture. They were practicing techniques designed to alter consciousness, to connect with higher dimensions, to access the divine directly. And their calendar was the foundation of that practice. Modern science is starting to understand something the ancients knew all along. Humans are chronobiological creatures. We have internal clocks that respond to light, to seasons, to cosmic rhythms. Your body knows when the sun rises, even if you're in a windowless room. Your hormones follow monthly cycles. Your immune system is stronger in summer than winter. You're not separate from the natural world. You're wired into it at a cellular level. But when you live by a calendar that's out of sync with those natural rhythms, your body gets confused. You're getting signals from society that don't match the signals from nature. Your schedule says it's time to work, but your biology says it's time to rest. Your calendar says it's spring, but the equinox hasn't happened yet. The dissonance builds up over time, and you start to feel it as stress, as fatigue, as a vague sense that something's wrong, but you can't quite identify what. Enoch's calendar eliminates that dissonance. It matches the solar year perfectly. The equinoxes and solstices fall on the same dates every year, which means your body's internal clock can actually sync up with the external system. You're not fighting against the calendar anymore. You're flowing with it. And that small change, that simple alignment, can have massive effects on your health, your energy, your mental clarity. But you'll never hear about this from mainstream sources. You'll never see a study on the psychological effects of calendar systems. You'll never hear a doctor suggest that maybe your chronic fatigue is caused by living out of sync with with natural time. Because that would require admitting that the system we're all using is broken, and the people who benefit from the current system will never admit that. So the knowledge stays underground. It stays with people who are willing to look beyond official narratives, who are willing to question what they've been taught, who are willing to consider that maybe, just maybe, the ancients knew something we've forgotten. And those people start experimenting. They start tracking time differently. They start paying attention to their own rhythms and how they match up with solar cycles. And they start noticing changes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could prove in a laboratory. Just a subtle sense that things flow better when you're working with the rhythm instead of against it. Projects that were stuck suddenly move forward. Relationships that were tense suddenly ease. Health issues that wouldn't resolve suddenly start improving. Is it the calendar? Is it just increased awareness? Does it even matter if the result is positive? The point is that something changes when you stop accepting the fabricated timeline and start remembering the true one. Your relationship with time itself becomes different. You're no longer a slave to the schedule, constantly racing to keep up with demands that never end. You start to see time as cyclical rather than linear, which means every ending is also a beginning. Every winter is followed by spring. Every challenge is temporary because the wheel keeps turning. And that perspective, that simple understanding that you're part of a cycle rather than trapped on a treadmill, can change everything. You stop panicking about getting older because you realize that age is just another phase of the cycle. You stop fearing failure because you understand that setbacks are part of the natural rhythm. You stop chasing success desperately because you know that your moment will come when the cycle aligns. This is the wisdom Enoch was trying to pass down. Not just a calendar, but a way of seeing. Not just a system for counting days, but a method for staying sane in a world that wants to drive you crazy. Because the fabricated timeline does drive people crazy. It creates artificial urgency, arbitrary deadlines, meaningless milestones that don't correspond to anything real. And you're supposed to organize your entire life around these fabrications, supposed to feel stressed when you don't meet them, supposed to judge your worth by how well you keep up with a schedule that was never based on reality in the first place. But when you know, really know, that the system is fake, that the timeline is fabricated, that the calendar you're using was designed to control rather than to serve, something shifts inside you. You stop giving it power. You stop letting it define your experience. You start living by your own rhythm, your own sense of right timing, your own understanding of when to act and when to wait. And people notice. They don't always understand why, but they feel it. There's something different about someone who's living in true time rather than fabricated time. They're calmer, more grounded, less reactive. They don't panic when plans change because they understand that change is part of the cycle. They don't force things that aren't ready because they can sense when the timing is off. They move through the world differently, and that difference is attractive, magnetic, powerful. This is what the calendar was always meant to do. Not to schedule your appointments or organize your tasks, but to keep you connected to the underlying rhythm of existence. To remind you daily that you're part of something bigger, something ancient, something that was here long before Rome and will be here long after everything we've built has crumbled to dust. Enoch saw this. He walked with God through the heavens and was shown how it all works. And he came back with a message. Here's the true count. Here's the real rhythm. Here's how you stay connected to the source. Use this, preserve this, pass this down, because there will come a time when people forget, when they're lost in fabricated time, when they need to remember. That time is now. You're living in it. The confusion, the exhaustion, the sense that something's off. It's all because you've been disconnected. But the connection is still there, still available, still waiting for you to remember. All you have to do is look up, pay attention, and start counting differently. Not out loud, not in a way that disrupts your daily life or makes you seem strange to others, but internally, quietly, keeping your own count based on the true rhythm. noting when the real equinoxes happen, feeling the turn of the seasons in your body, living as if you know what time it really is, even if everyone around you is still living by the false count. And gradually, that knowledge changes you. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you move through the world. You become part of a secret tradition that's been unbroken for thousands of years. The people who remember, the people who know, the people who refuse to let the truth die no matter how deeply it's buried. Enoch's 364-day calendar proves we live in a fabricated timeline. That's not a theory or a belief. It's a demonstrable fact. The math works. The cosmic alignment works. The system functions perfectly without any corrections or adjustments. And the only reason we're not using it is because people in power decided centuries ago that control was more important than truth. But their decision doesn't have to be your decision. You can choose differently. You can remember differently. You can live differently. And when you do, when you step out of fabricated time and back into true time, you're not just changing your own experience. You're keeping the flame alive for the next person and the next and the next. Because this knowledge doesn't belong to any one group or tradition or institution. It belongs to humanity. It's our inheritance from Enoch, from the ancient world, from everyone who ever looked up at the stars and understood that we're part of something magnificent, something ordered, something true. And no empire, no matter how powerful, can take that away forever. They can hide it for a while. They can ban the books, burn the scrolls, kill the people who remember. But the truth is written in the sky, in the movement of the sun, in the rhythm of the seasons. And as long as those things exist, as long as people are willing to look and see, the calendar will keep coming back. It's coming back now. In conversations like this one, in people asking questions that weren't supposed to be asked, in the growing awareness that something fundamental has been taken from us and we want it back. The fabricated timeline is cracking. The lies are becoming visible, and more people every day are choosing to remember what Enoch tried so hard to preserve. The 364-day calendar, the true count, the divine rhythm. It's been here all along, waiting for you to notice. And now that you have, now that you know, you can never unknow it. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? How will you live differently knowing that time itself has been weaponized against you? The answer is simpler than you think. You just start paying attention. You mark the real equinoxes. You note the real solstices. You feel the rhythm in your body and you follow it instead of fighting it. And slowly, day by day, you reconnect with something that was almost lost, but never quite destroyed. You reconnect with true time. And in doing so, you reconnect with your true self.